Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 32 with guest Pete Bercich. Pete, if you're not familiar, is an analyst for the Vikings radio network. He calls the games on KFAN with Paul Allen and does a good job. Long time played, he coached, sees the game at a level that I always appreciate. He and I he knows this, but before a lot of these games, I'll see him in the press box and we chat about what he's thinking about the game. Happens at halftime too, but always enjoy just the clear-eyed view from a guy who has done this for a long, long time. He's watched a lot of film and kind of bases a lot of his thoughts from that, which is, to me, that's the people who really look at it and analyze it from a basis of knowing what they're saying. That is what I value really heavily. So I thought it'd be good to talk to him about Sam Darnold and about this defense and what he's seen through about half the season and what he's looking to see over the back half. We talked about Sam Darnold. We talked about Blake Cashman, talked about Brian Flores and his value and a lot of that stuff. So I really think you guys will enjoy this. I think Pete and I are going to try to do more of these because we like talking off the mic, and it'll be fun to just kind of bring that his analysis, I think, to you guys in a fun way. So I appreciate you guys being here. If it is your first time and you don't know me, my name's Alec Lewis. I cover the Vikings for The Athletic, right almost on a daily basis at theathletic.com. You can find that stuff over the stories written over there. Got a bunch of stuff coming to you guys over the next few weeks that I'm excited about. And then if you're new here, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That button's right beneath here. Takes 2 seconds. Helps us out. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, would really appreciate rate, review, subscribe. Do what you got to do there. But, yeah, do a couple of these a week. Do some live shows, sprinkle in. And, yeah, I think it'll come through. Hopefully it does, just how much I enjoy the job that I have. So without wasting more of your time, here is Pete Bercich, my conversation with Pete about kind of the state of the Vikings. All right, Pete, welcome to the show. How you been?
Good. 7-2. So in the grand scheme of things, yeah, everything's been good. It's been an interesting season. Then these next couple of weeks will be very interesting with 3 road games, back to back to back, and going to London, and yeah, it's been. We've had so many dramatic seasons in the last 30 some years that this one is it's been good.
I began my last show by talking about Jacksonville, so we'll get into football because I brought you on not to talk about geography. But what do you think of Jacksonville?
Oh, that's fine.
Just as a city. Well, the listeners know I was kind of like, this is it. All right.
Yeah, I guess over time it depends on the city and where you stay. Now, I guarantee you there's nice parts or certain parts of Jacksonville that look like every other city. But certain cities, right, when you stay downtown, there's just not a lot there, right? Buffalo is a small town. It's spread out, right? And there's just not a lot going on where you stay. So, yeah, you can't, because you can go to LA and stay somewhere and be like, what, you stay downtown in LA, you're like, what, there's nothing here. It's, they're buildings and stuff, but it's like, you can't go anywhere. You can't walk anywhere. So, every time you go, very few places are like Seattle, where when you stay downtown, you can walk anywhere. There's certain cities that just make for a better road trip. The stadium itself was very wide open. It reminded me of the University of Michigan, right? You go to University of Michigan, you walk on the field, and you're like, there's 114,000 people here. Because when you drive up to the stadium, it's only 2 or 3 stories. It's not very tall, right? It's just a lot of it's underground, and it's real flat, real spread out. And the Jacksonville Stadium has that same. Everbank Stadium is the same way. It's if you're in the upper deck on one side of the 50-yard line and your buddy's on the other, you won't even be able to see him. He's half a mile away, right? So the footprint, it's the anti Soldier Field, right, where everything's just crammed in there, and you can see someone's face across the field easy. Where down there you're 10 miles away from them. So all that stuff adds and takes away to the experience of the game, I guess, and so it's just a little. It's different.
I stayed downtown, and that was kind of. I'm like, all right, I kind of wanted more out of Jacksonville, but yeah, and I mean, that's just how it was. And then the weather, the nature of the game, which allows me to segue. I mean, obviously, it probably makes sense to start with Sam and the turnovers. I mean, part of the reason I want to have you on is because you watch the film and you see this stuff pretty clearly with the level of expertise, and I think. Like people like me, the average person can't notice. I'll start you by just asking how you have thought about Sam's turnovers, maybe throughout the year, but specifically the last 2 weeks and Sunday.
I mean, I'm thinking. You go back and you're like, there's a couple that were tipped, and then there are a couple where you're going. The one against the Colts in particular, getting the red zone, rolls out, and he throws it to a guy who had been standing there pretty much the whole play. It's not like he was covering someone on the sideline and came off out of vision. I'm going through my, mentally going through the first interception. I felt, and I said this on the broadcast, I thought he forced it to JJ. There really wasn't anybody open. It was a quick route, 1, 2, 3, plant throw. If no one's there, get rid of it, or skip it to somebody. But he tried to force it into JJ. That's an interesting point with all three of these, is they were all passes to Justin. The second one in the end zone was thrown like way behind Justin. Right now, I don't know if the linebacker Devin Lloyd was worried about him falling back in or whatever, but the ball was thrown very, it was off. And then the last one, I mean, there were 3 Jacksonville defenders around JJ, and if JJ had darted to the back of the pylon, maybe he could, and then you look at the injury report this week and talks about his hand, right? And so, I don't necessarily, it's like the hand would explain inaccuracy, or it would explain not a lot of zip on the throws, as much, let's say, zip that he's had before. And so that might explain away some of it, but it's not all of it. And I think that's part of the problem with this, is it's not usually, I mean, if you have something going wrong in defense and you're like, for example, right, you're having a hard time covering a receiver. Well, if it's the same corner covering different receivers, and it's the same, right? So my point is that if it's easy to diagnose, it's usually easier to fix. When it's a bit of an enigma, and you're like, okay, well, in this case it's this, in this case it's that, then it gets a little bit tougher to to figure out. But for Darnold, he wants to be, if and I'm sure he does, but if you want to be a starter in this league, you're gonna get the yips. You're going to have a bad week, maybe 2, where, you just make some bad decisions and you have to fight through them and come out on the other side. And it's like a kicker, right? A kicker is doing well. Then all of a sudden has a problem. Then has to sit down and go through the process of what's the problem? How do I fix it? What do I need to do to fix it? Do that. And then you fix it. That is why certain kickers stick around in the league for a very, very long time. Same thing with quarterbacks. So for Darnold, he's got to prove to the league, because again, he's auditioning for 31 other teams out there. He's got to prove to the rest of the league that he can fix this. And I I don't think there's anyone in the NFL more equipped to fix a quarterback than Kevin O'Connell. Maybe there might be a coach or two, but he's got to be one of the top 5, right? So he's in the right place in that regard. So, yeah, I'm not. The uneasiness when he's throwing the ball in the red zone is not. I don't know if it's going to take a while for that to leave.
No, I think that's fair.
Right.
And what was interesting, you mentioned the 3 interceptions. Going back through the film, and I don't know if you will remember this play, but it was fairly early in the game, and it might have been a 3rd down, but there was T.J. Hawkinson on a crossing route, and he threw the ball toward T.J., and it should have been picked early in the game. So it was another turnover-worthy play, and I believe he had a check down on that play. So for me, as I'm watching him and analyzing it, it just feels like there are times where he's making the perfect read, the ball is accurate enough. And then there are other times where it's how did he not see? I was thinking the Colts game, the Jordan Addison left-handed touchdown catch, for him to feel space in that moment and make that play, really impressive. But then there are times where it's how did he not? The decision, it's just so interesting to me.
Right. So let me ask you this. I think now that you go through and think about it, a lot of the really bad interceptions have been when he's rolling out of the pocket.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, they might all be to his left. Now that I'm thinking about it, the one against the Colts, he was rolling out to his left. The one that should have been intercepted, he was rolling out to his left. So maybe we figured it out. He's got to just don't and what's interesting too is you don't normally when quarterbacks normally are much better rolling out and throwing to their right. Most of the bootlegs you want to go
Stroud.
that way because if you're rolling out to your left, you're throwing across your body, so to speak. It's more difficult to roll out to your left and throw if you're a right-handed quarterback. So maybe that's the title of your next article, right? Quit rolling him out to his left. But there have been some decisions in the pocket too. Some of those might have been under duress. There was a tip ball. I remember one was a tip ball, but much less of a panic. They're not as, those interceptions were not as, what are we doing here type interceptions. You know what I mean? The head scratchers, I think, have come from him rolling out to his left, and I think thank you. I think you helped me figure something out.
No
here.
chance. I'm curious about this. I was talking to a buddy of mine who is a high school coach earlier this week, and we were just talking about the aggressiveness of the offense and the passing game, and I've gone. I mean, I totally understand knowing what wins in this league, that explosive passes and explosive plays are critical to successful offenses. But I mean, part of me wonder, do you think Kevin O'Connell's willingness / want to throw the ball downfield lends itself to more turnovers? And if so, do you live with that? How do you think about that?
You have at least the one good thing is we have an identity on both offense and defense, right? Defensively, our identity is we're going to get aggressive, we're going to blitz, we're going to pressure. For example, against Jacksonville, we knew that our linebackers, that their running backs had a very hard time blocking our linebackers, right? And so that's our thing. We kept doing it. Now, offensively, that's our identity, right? We're not San Francisco where we're going to run the ball till you stop it and then throw it. We're built to throw the football. We're built to have receivers that are going to put your DBs in a bad spot. We're built to get down the field, play pass, keep extra guys in the block, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I mean, it's a fine balance when you're coaching, but between having an identity, but at the same time not asking your guys to do what they're not capable of doing. That's why you have free agency, and that's why you have the draft. So you draft and bring guys in that fit your style. We've seen that on defense as every single free agent we brought in, all 5 of them have surprised on the upside. Yeah. Every one of them, right? And so that was because again, don't forget this is a team that coming into the season we're like 500, maybe on a good side, maybe finish second or third in the division, but Andrew Van Ginkel's worked out, Shaq Griffin's worked out, Jerry Tillery has worked out, Jonathan Grenard has worked out. The Jalen Redmond, Taki Taimani, the rookies have worked out. Stephon Gilmore,
Cash,
so yeah, Cashman obviously. So the pieces you all brought in, you see what I'm saying there. So you as a coach in a pro personnel group, or as college scouting too, get to know and identify the kind of players they want. And it's important. I talk about this sometimes too with the draft, and I remember when Tony Dungy had his defense back in the day, the Tampa 2 and all that, you still had the true 3-4, 2-gap Patriots, Cleveland Browns, right? They wanted linebackers that were 6'4", 250 and can run. Well, Tony Dungy had the way his system was with gap control and speed, you could have a 6'2", 220-pound linebacker be very, very good in the system. And that guy is not going to get drafted necessarily in the first round because he's quote unquote undersized. But he had a system that could utilize an undersized linebacker very, very well. So our will linebacker, Ed McDaniel, you had a lot of guys that were not prototypical size at the time. This is 25, 20, 30 years, whatever, years ago. They would still work. And I think defensively, we're seeing that play itself out. Now, offensively, you want to do the same thing, but then you get to the problem of quarterback. And quarterback is so different because the spectrum of quarterbacks, you're number one, you're not picking and choosing. So you have to know what you want, which I think that, Darnold fits that. And, we'll see with McCarthy if he's going to fit the system because but then again, you got to have a guy with a certain amount of talent, and, right? It's a lot easier when you have 10 linebackers on a list than, that you like, and then you may have one quarterback, right? So, but you have to accommodate their abilities. So, what are Darnold's abilities? I think we're kind of seeing it in that respect as we go, because do you have a big enough body of work to judge on what he can and can't do, right? When he played all the time, that was 3-4 years ago. He's definitely changed since then. My point in all this is saying there's a bit of a feeling out process with all of that. It'd be great to sit down with Kevin O'Connell and be like, yeah, what's the deal? What's going on? And he could easily say, well, it's just when he's moving, he's not setting his feet right, or he's, this or that or whatever, and we'll get it fixed. So, that we don't know, but no, I'm not comfortable right now with how he's been playing. Obviously, I don't think anybody is, and so he's gonna have to prove his way out.
That's kind of, and I guess for me, it's some ways I've wondered, like, and part of the reason I asked it that way was like, could there be more quick game? But then I think it probably raises the question of, well, like, do the receivers get off well against physicality? Does Darnold make quick enough decisions to be able to work the quick game? I think it raised a lot of questions. I just wonder sometimes, and I this is anecdotal, so it's not backed up by any advancement. It feels like there's just a lot of deep drop downfield passing, and I get it because, again, that lends itself to explosive plays. And when you have the type of pass catching talent they have, I think you have to operate that way. I just don't know. I wonder sometimes if there's possibility for more of a balance, and maybe it doesn't fit Sam Darnold's skill set. Maybe it just I don't know. It might be a bad question.
No, it's not a bad question. I mean, I think we've seen more of a quick passing game, and Kevin O'Connell has said so himself that he wants to do more of a more quick passing with T.J. Hockenson being back, and T.J. was first 4 receptions against Jacksonville are all for first downs. So, you're gonna see more of that. You're gonna see more quick passing game. The defenses that you see. If you're getting some type of 3 deep, which we don't get a ton of, the speed outs, and no one runs a speed out better than Jordan Addison. And when they're there, they take them. We saw some 2 weeks ago against the Colts, but we didn't see any against any against Jacksonville because they defensively schemed to take that away. And so, yeah, but that's, and you can hear that's a lot what Coach O'Connell talks about with evolving, right? And throughout a season, challenge and continuously reinventing yourself. Those are the phrases that he uses, and that's exactly what I believe he's referring to. Is you're going to keep doing something until they stop it, and once they stop it, you got to go, all right, what did they do, and how are we going to attack that if we see it again? And that's the game. That's the game within the game, I guess, that you see week in and week out. And, fortunately, our defense is good enough to allow the offense some growing
I remember
pains.
in Cleveland for joint practices, this feels like 3 years ago. It was not. You and I talked about the run game a little. I remember in the lobby of that hotel, I was asking you about the run game. I mean, obviously, I don't think it's breaking news to say that Aaron Jones has kind of just enhanced everything in that aspect of what they've been able to do. But how I wonder for you just how you have felt about what you've seen in the run game this year compared to the first 2 seasons with Kevin O'Connell as a play caller.
It's been, it's been, I can't sit down and graph and chart out
right.
if the plays are different. You know what I mean? But there's the running game is absolutely better with Aaron Jones. His vision is second to none. I mean, against Jacksonville, we ran a lead ISO. This is a play that's been around for 50 years.
Fullback,
right? I formation, fullback goes in there, boom, and then tailback goes, reads, and depending on where the linebackers flow and everything, you might get 3, you might get whatever. They ran an ISO, and Aaron Jones just took it outside because he could tell that the defensive end had lost contain, and he got 9 yards on the play. We didn't have that before, right? The thing with Aaron Jones what we absolutely needed going into the season was a short yardage running back, and we needed someone in the deep red zone. And the first game of the year, that's exactly against the Giants. It's exactly what we saw out of Aaron Jones. Was he took the handoff and just bounced it outside. Nick McLeod had a perfect angle on him. Didn't matter. Still beat him to the post. And how many games? I always talk about the Cincinnati game last year. We had a 3rd and 1, tried it, didn't make it. We had a 4th and 1, tried it, didn't make it. They get the ball, they score. So those were the 2 areas that absolutely had to get better, and he's done that. But the running game is much more dynamic with him, and I think Dalvin Cook did well with this coaching staff as a running back. So, you know what I mean? Is it the it's just what is it? Is it the player or or the scheme? And we need this offense needs the better the running back that this offense has, the better it's going to be. And I heard Coach talk about Coach Flores talk about Cashman being a multiplier, right? When he's on the field, everybody. Well, that's the running back position in this offense. The more you can hand it off, the more it's going to pull defenders in the box, and then the more likely you are to get behind them.
That's exactly where it feels like Jacksonville with their strategy of, playing split safety and then just rolling everything to Justin. It's like the more that they are able to run the ball efficiently and then potentially explosively, the more you convince defenses not to just sell out to stop Justin. So it feels like that is going to be an integral approach in moving forward if defenses continue to play with as much split safety as Jacksonville did.
It's a total Belichick thing, right? Take away what they want to do or take away what they do best. And if they beat us running the ball 35, 40 times for 195 yards, then they deserve to win. But that's how they're going to choose to die, so to speak. They're not going to say, all right, we're going to blitz and leave our corners on islands, and you'll pick a blitz up twice, and score touchdowns on both of them. Right? So, it's you got to have patience. And that's another thing with Tony Dungy. That was the whole concept of Tampa too. He's like, are there a lot of holes in it? Yeah, there's a ton of them. But does a coordinator have the patience to throw the ball or run the ball 13 times on a drive?
Right.
No, they don't. They want the big plays, right? So, that's the other part of it, is to say, maybe the best route right now is handing the football off, and if it takes longer, and we have to, that's another part of this whole. You saw it against Jacksonville. We had long drives, 43 minutes of possession, right? So,
and I give Kevin O'Connell credit. They ran the ball 43 times, the most he's run it in a game. And I think about it like myself, and I know this. It's like if you're playing Madden, you don't want to run the ball 13 times down the field. You want to throw. I think like in this day and age, you're geared to want to throw, and he obviously is as a former quarterback. So, you mentioned Blake Cashman, and we won't talk a ton about the defense, but I mean the Vikings are undefeated with him active, and I don't like. I mean it's one player.
Have you been talking to his agent?
I have not. No, I mean I haven't not talked to his agent, but
I'm just saying because that's one of those things where you're like, yeah, maybe we should renegotiate.
Yeah, of course, and he's working me on that. Obviously, it's a smart move by the local Blake Bears. But no, I mean, why do you think his presence, or what do you think his presence allows this defense that maybe when he's not available, they don't have at their disposal?
I think because you didn't have a clear. I mean, when Blake was gone, I think some of it had to do with the timing.
Sure.
Stay with me on this one. Some of it had to do with the timing of the season, but when Blake was out, how did we replace him? We didn't. It wasn't as if Blake is out, so Camus Grugier Hill goes in, and nothing else changes. Blake was out, and then they did some things with Dallas Turner, where he was an off-the-ball linebacker. He was, which the first Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown. He was kind of washed out. Yeah, it was him. He was out. Yep, he was out there. Or you had Andrew Van Ginkel off the ball, which is not where he's best. Or you played Josh Metellus at linebacker in more base down run type situations, which the Rams, one of their big runs early in those touchdown drives was kind of a mistake on that in that regard. So my point is it was kind of a little bit of this, a little bit. Oh, you go to LA, and that's the other part. So you have the loss against Detroit, and then you have that short turnaround. So you don't have a full week. You have a day to figure out, okay, how are we going to change things, or what else can we do? And when we went to LA, you saw Pat Jones playing a lot of 3 technique, not outside linebacker, because Van Ginkel and Grenard were on the field with Pat Jones. Pat Jones was playing an interior lineman where like Bullard or Tillery or someone else would live, which was another part of the whole thing with Metellus on some of the runs. And so you have one guy out, and then you have all these other, because of that, you have a bunch of these other changes. So obviously Blake Cashman is a very good blitzer, very smart, gets guys lined up, but then with him in, all these other pieces play where they are best. And the sum of that whole thing means much better defense. So Yeah, so I mean that's probably my best explanation for the loss of, because if you looked at this defense and 3-4 weeks ago and said, all right, if there's one guy that goes out that we're screwed, you know, um, Cashman wouldn't have been your
No, I
first
mean I
pick,
felt like Jonathan Grenard.
right?
Jonathan Grenard
Not at all,
probably.
right? Grenard or one of the corners, it's like the same old thing. But then you realize how important he is, and I think the short week too with the LA thing didn't help, because you can't make you went in with a game plan to Detroit and it didn't quite work. And then you're like, okay, so how are we going to fix this? And when you have one day to practice, one day to game plan, one day to practice, and then you're on an airplane, it doesn't it carries over. So I think some of the Detroit game was interesting because that was really just 4 plays. Detroit's good enough to where when you mess up, they're going to make you pay. And they did. And they scored 4 touchdowns in that regard. There was a mental error or an obvious mistake on all 4 of their big play touchdowns. And then with the Rams, it was a little bit different. It was just, they just kept, moving the ball. And again, I just think if they had a full week for that Rams game, it might
You
have been a
watch all these
different
guys
outcome.
when they sign them, and you do a film series usually pretty over the summer of the draft picks and free agents. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I part of me wonders what you thought as you were watching film of all these free agents they brought in on the defensive side at the time, and then, like, I mean, is what they've done as a collective beyond what you would have thought then? Because I mean, I was not very, I got to be honest, like I was not very familiar with Blake
Yeah.
Cashman's skill set. Then I watch him, I watch him as a
Right.
coverage linebacker, and it's like he has really good instincts, processing. And then Jonathan Grenard, I mean, I beyond what he's done as a pass rusher, like this guy plays the run hard as heck every single week. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's just been amazing. And I don't know when they signed all these guys. There's
Yeah.
like, okay, these guys have produced, but you would have watched it too.
Right. Well, yeah, and what you saw, and this goes back to what I was talking about in the off season when you're college scouting and doing your pro personnel and your free agency, finding guys that fit your system, right? And when your system's a little bit different, you can get a lot more value out
It's
of
a great
guys
point.
that other teams can't. I mean, Flores is saving this defense in payroll millions of dollars, because if you give me you give me 4 or 5 all pros, I can call the defense. I could do it, right? But they know exactly what they're looking for. Right now, you have those free agents and an undrafted rookie or second year guy, and Ivan Pace, right? It's like, is it the land of misfit toys? It's like, no, these guys, all their skill sets are exactly what they need for the system. And you saw Van Ginkel in Miami make some great plays. Was it all year? No. Grenard played. He's very solid. He's been the most solid defender the whole season. He's had injuries and some other things, but every one of these guys that they brought in is playing. How would I say it? These guys all had these free agents you brought in. They all had moments a year ago, like when you're studying them, where you have a game, you're like, oh my god, this. I'm seeing Blake Cashman in Houston run line games with Grenard, and they're coming home. It's like, okay, that's. But did he do it every week? No, because he was asked to do other things. Every one of these guys fit the exact piece of the puzzle, and the defensive coaches, are not putting these guys in positions that aren't suited for them. You're not seeing, maybe that's what we saw a little bit with Cashman being out, is these guys had to move, and like Andrew Van Ginkel playing off the ball inside, not inside linebacker position. So he'll be okay, but he's not going to be intercepting screens for touchdowns and sacking the quarterback like he would if he's blitzing off the edge or blitzing up the middle on third down or rushing up the middle on third down. So every one of these guys they brought in they've all reached they're all playing at the highest level we saw them play last year, right? And again, they didn't make a mistake on any of them. Every one of the, that's the thing. Every one of these guys they brought in has played at the highest level that you saw in film. They're all well paid, but it's not like you broke the bank and brought in 3 former All-Pros or 4 former All-Pros, right? You brought in a bunch of guys that you like, they're kind of second tier, right? They're top, they just, Cashman, he's all right.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, none of these guys they brought in were household names. Let's just put it that way, right? When they signed these guys, you're like, who's this guy? But they're all playing at a very high level, and that's again when scheme meets the players, and another advantage of having a unique scheme. It's another advantage of defensively, you're the only one in the league really consistently doing what you're doing. I mean, what would we do if we had a $30-40 million defensive tackle?
It's a great question,
right? Think about that. You're getting great play. You're getting great play out of the group that they have. Jihad Ward's doing a good job on third down.
Those guys stop the run
Phillips,
every weekend almost. I mean,
yeah, they're doing a great job, and it's like put those three guys. I'm trying to think of another place where they ask a ton out of their D linemen. Well, even in LA, right? It's with the Rams, or it's like the system they're in fits them, and the system fits them.
No, and I thought your point about how much essentially Flores in the system and how much it's saving in terms of monetarily and roster construction. I think that's a very good point. It makes
he's the greatest cost savings that Ziggy's ever seen. So part of me is like, you know what? Make him the highest paid coordinator.
Yeah.
You're still saving money overall. I know they all come out of 2 different pots or whatever, but it's like the guy,
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point. Last one, and then I'll get you out of here. It's been fun, been awesome. But I mean, I'm always every Sunday I show up, I'm always thinking about the thing I want to see on that given day. So I'll kind of ask you, as you show up to Nashville, and to watch that game, but then just down this back half of the season, as you show up, what do you think? What do you want to see? What are you trying to figure? What do you want to see in terms of maybe strategy or player performance? What is most interesting, important to you?
The evolution of our quarterback right now. I mean, that's not a mystery. I think everybody's thinking the same thing. But yeah, the evolution of that position is huge. The turnovers and all that. You can't keep doing what you're doing. Can't go on. You got lucky. You want to, I wouldn't say lucky, but you found a way to win a game at Jacksonville. You keep doing that every week. You're not going to survive. Cam Robinson and how he continues to evolve. I mean, you got him in a good position, kind of like Darnold, where he's, auditioning for a bunch of other teams. So can he sustain? I think it's kind of like, last year with some of our players that were going into free agency, right? And you got the best out of them because they want to get paid. So for Cam Robinson, that's, Danielle Hunter comes to mind. I mean, Danielle 2 years ago missed a lot of games. He was nicked up. He was injured. Last year, going into free agency, he played the run. I remember that game. Remember that game down in Atlanta? He's throwing tight ends in the backfield. He's throwing 2 tight ends. I remember
backfield. Chicago. He tracks down Justin Fields at across the field or something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he played lights out, but he was going into a free agent year. So can Cam Robinson continue to play at the level that we've seen? So, and then defensively, I just think the biggest challenge, or what I want to see, is I want to see our cornerbacks and our safeties just compete, right? Yeah, I want to see him compete, challenge, because they get put in some tough spots because we're cramming a bunch of people at the line of scrimmage, so they're kind of out in no man's land one-on-one. They're definitely at a disadvantage, but it doesn't mean you let them throw and catch, right? You still have to compete. And when those guys are competing, and like we saw, especially against Indianapolis, that group played so
Byron
well.
Murphy has been, I feel like he's played great of late. He's
Yeah.
another contract guy. I mean, as
Yeah.
you talk about the
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. And he's a guy that last year he was around and then kind of disappeared. And, so yeah, Murphy's playing too for his next contract. So we got him right where, right when you want him. Yeah, it's just defensively, it's been such a tale of two defenses, right? What we've seen the last 2 weeks compared to the 2 weeks prior to that, compared to the, 5 weeks before that, it's like we were really good and great, and then all of a sudden, Detroit, who has a history of tearing us up, we have to figure them out. And then you have, that 7-day window where you're like, oh my god. So consistency, then maybe is that what we're trying to say?
On it.
Defensively,
but
stay.
One of the things too is like, one of the narratives I think externally with this Flores defense is always like, oh, they got figured out, and I don't really like. I think that's such an easy like external thing to say when I don't know, but I am really interested when Arizona and Kyler Murray and that offense comes to town, when Kirk and that Atlanta offense comes, like I think Will Levis and Caleb Williams, it's going to be tough sledding for those guys probably against this coordinator, but I mean against good offenses, I'm really curious to see if that 2-game stretch, if it was just kind of a blip, if they move past it, if strategically they're different. I think consistency is.
I mean, I think historically we've done better against the younger the quarterback, the better we've done, right? Because we give them all these looks. I mean, you against Justin Fields. I mean, he still in years past still made a lot of plays against us. And we just last year, just the first, at least the game in Chicago, it was not even close. I think that, veteran quarterbacks have a better, because I think they understand what they're seeing a little bit better. But then the veteran quarterbacks, like I look at Cousins, come at a cost. Yeah, Cousins might know exactly what's going on, but we all know if you get someone in his face, you hit him, right? Then he's going to start making mistakes. So, so the quarterback, Mac Jones. Look at Mac Jones in the first half of that game, right? Diving and getting first downs and running with the ball, and then by the second half, he's just like, I'm getting rid of this thing, right? Throws right to Byron Murphy. He's like, screw it, I'm just throwing it because I've been hit so many times, So, you can get figured out in a way where they might know how to give you problems, but the team that you play against still has to have the people to be able to do it, right? You still have to have, and that's maybe where Detroit is the problem, because in Detroit you have a good veteran quarterback, smart, knows what he's doing. They have a great offensive coordinator, but
offensive
they have talent,
line, skill players,
right? Where the first Gibbs touchdown against a lesser of a running back, that would have been a move the chain situation. It wouldn't have been light up the scoreboard. So, yeah, I mean, you might figure him out, so to speak, but to be able to execute it, that's a whole nother animal.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you hopping on and starting to talking about Jacksonville.
Talking
about Jacksonville at the beginning. I don't know if you planned for that one, but I mean, you were kinder to the city than I was. That was nice of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been there before. Last time we went, it was like 50 degrees out, and everybody had down coats and scarves and everything. The last time we were there, so
I guess it was a better.
It's just everywhere.
For you, it was a better viewing experience than Tottenham. You guys were up in outer space at that game, which was silly. But
yeah, it's just yeah, it's just different, man. Every place is different. Some places you like better than others. I love Seattle. Seattle's my favorite place to go. You know, Detroit's kind of, well, he's talking about being in Detroit. We're up in the rafters. But yeah, Detroit's another place like that where you stay way out
that's a good
in
point.
the suburbs, and you're not seeing anything. So that's who knows. That's one of the things. Like with Denny Green, we'd fly to Chicago. We'd stay at the Hilton Airport, the Hilton Hotel at the
O'Hare?
airport. Like we'd pull up to a terminal, get off, walk through the airport, and walk into the hotel. Because Denny didn't like us staying anywhere where there were distractions. So everywhere we went, we were in the middle of nowhere or in a terrible spot for a hotel. Always.
And the Kevin O'Connell experience is the Marina Del Rey Ritz-Carlton. Like, all right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the league's changed in that, in that regard. Trust me. But yeah, back in the day, it was find the worst hotel where no one can go anywhere and get in any trouble. And that's where we're staying. Oh, and by the way, they cost less too, yeah. Ironically. So, it was a kind of a win-win, I guess, from an organizational standpoint. But yeah, we
Hilton Airport,
take that 50 some minute ride down 94 to get 294 94 to get to Soldier Field. Oh my God,
sounds like a blast.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. We'll do it again at some point. Appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Anytime.
And that'll do it for my conversation with Pete Bercich. Really appreciated him spending the time that he spent on this Thursday to talk about a bunch of different stuff. And I said this on the pod, but I thought his mention of Brian Flores' value was really fascinating. And you'd like to think that Vikings leadership hears that, sees that, recognizes that. And then just his thoughts on Sam Darnold. I know we joked a little bit about him rolling out, and obviously there have been plenty of interceptions from the pocket too, and some of the footwork stuff. So, it'll be just really interesting to watch. This Titans defense has been really good in pass coverage. They play with a lot of split safety, which is what Jacksonville utilized last week to kind of limit the explosive. So, how the Vikings look against that unit is going to be pretty interesting. And I'm looking forward to being in Nashville to see it. Like I said, that'll do it for the Alec Lewis Show. If you made it this far, appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, rate and review, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We will continue early next week. And until then, enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the game this weekend. Follow us on the socials, and we will be back soon enough. That'll do it for episode 32 of the Alec Lewis Show.